Hey folks, thanks for joining us for office hours today. It's Friday at noon, which is why we're here. And my name is Sarah Mayer. I am a partner at Shift Collaborative, and with me is also my partner. Say hi, Cynthia.
I'm Cynthia Closkey, and this is our weekly chat. Always fun to come in on a Friday afternoon and just kind of talk about things that are on our minds.
And we want to talk to you too. So how this all works is that we're actually here to answer your questions, although we do have some things lined up that we're excited to talk about. This is your hour, just like office hours, from college days. So if you have a question, you can submit that to us via the live chat here on YouTube, or if you prefer, you can also submit your question via email. And the email to do that is officehours@shiftcollaborative.com. So if you have a question that you want to ask about anything related to marketing or advertising, communications, design, any of those types of things, we will do our best to answer those questions.
Absolutely. And it's Friday the 13th today. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I've never been particularly suspicious or superstitious about this date, but I do understand that a lot of people are.
Mm-hmm. Both positive and negative, I think, though. I mean, some cultures have 13 as a lucky number.
Yeah.
I think ancient Chinese people and ancient Egyptians, long ago it was lucky. And then I don't know what happened that all of a sudden people are like, no. Although I do believe that there is a religious piece to that of the apostles, but I might be wrong about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we have assigned some negativity or some ominous feelings about Friday the 13th, but wow, we really run with it. It's a thing.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And any minute now, one of my cats, possibly my black cat, may run across here. So let's just decide that that's a lucky thing as well. So.
Yeah, that could be lucky too. Cool. All right. So folks, you know how it works. If you have a question, please go ahead and chat it. And one of the things we always start with while we're waiting for those questions to roll in are, things happening around the marketing world this week. So why don't we get started with some of those happenings, some of the in the news pieces?
Sure, for sure. Of course, this being the fourth quarter and coming up on holiday season, this is typically when a whole batch of ads, and in particular, sort of more flashy ads, come in. And so I think we've seen a couple. What have you seen lately?
Well, I just saw this Amazon ad. Have you seen the Amazon ad at all? Oh, you're on mute. So Amazon has a new ad that they've just released for the fourth quarter. I think they just released it this week, perhaps, or in the last week. And it's called the show goes on, or the show will go on. You know that phrase. And it's really awesome. Are you going to show a piece of it? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, here I am grabbing that. Did I unmute me? Yes.
You are unmuted. Yes.
Okay.
The star of the winter show is...
Good evening. All schools across the country will close by the end of the week until further notice as coronavirus reached out.
I'm going to put a pause both because it's such a poignant moment, and also because I think if we show the whole ad, we won't be able to show this recording later on. But what a powerful piece of theater this is already. So do you want to talk more about what kinds of things caught your eye on this, and then we'll tell people to go. Do you want me to jump ahead to show some of the later parts?
I mean, I can tell you what happens at the end, or I can just let people go and find this this commercial and watch it for themselves. But I think what we're seeing so far is a brand responding to, what people are experiencing. Things are being canceled or put on hold, or they have to be experienced in a different way, a safer way, a way that keeps everybody healthy. So brands are, big brands are responding to how things are going to have to be this holiday season, and so that's what we see Amazon doing here. You are on me. Are we going? Do you want me to reveal the ending?
I don't really know. I am just having technical challenges with my sound and things. So yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. Like this, and that's often what we see in the holiday season is a more kind of it's a heartstring tugging time, I guess.
Yeah.
And of times right now where emotions are maybe even a little higher than usual. It makes sense to play off that. I love that they're choosing a really topical one. This is very beautiful. There's also a lot of good representation being used here, some real life situations. And,
yes.
Can't wait to see what happens to this young ballet dancer. It's a great, and that's what you want to see in an ad. You also want it to be memorable for the products. And,
yes, and I promise that Amazon does get their packaging into this commercial, but it's not done. It's such a well done commercial, and it's not sort of overtly focused on the product and product placements and all of these different areas of the shots. So yeah, I would encourage you to watch the full piece and let us know what you think about it.
Absolutely, very good, very cool choice there.
Yeah.
Another ad that we spotted this week, and again, let me make sure I'm muting my sound here on Amazon while I pull it up, was one from Coca-Cola.
Yeah, and this one's, these are both kind of what I would consider long form commercials. They're, there's a story, there's an arc, there's a sort of, a narrative with it. And this one is no different than, I think, the last one in terms of, having a longer format and, as you said, sort of pulling at the heartstrings.
Mm-hmm. So The Letter, this one.
Yeah, it's called The Letter.
The same kind of dramatic moment as we was the last one. This one's even more exciting. I love the great storytelling for an ad like this.
Yeah, and this one, I have to admit, I am not an overly emotional kind of a person, but both this commercial and also the Amazon commercial did make me tear up a little bit. So there's that.
Right. I'm also thinking about how, when we think of Santa Claus, at least here in the US, and I guess probably now worldwide in many ways, we think of him in his red and white outfit, which was popularized really by Coca-Cola. Before Coca-Cola started including him in ads, he wasn't in red and white. So there's maybe a little bit of a full circle kind of a situation on there too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that, Coca-Cola does well with their holiday ads. I always like to see, they have the polar bears and, they do good stuff with their holiday commercials, I feel.
Yeah. Sure, they've got a lot of funding, but they're also.
Oh yeah, that helps.
a little bit. And then you had spotted, and a product close to our hearts was, Apple's virtual event announcing their new many things this past week, which people seemed really excited. People used to go to these events, then they would also be streamed, but now they've really bought into the whole virtual thing, and the event is, I think, a lot more watchable. Maybe not surprising, it's crafted for people to watch it, but I think they're more effective than they were.
Yeah.
But so you had noted their greatness ad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're taking some, well-known celebrities and putting them in the ad, which doesn't hurt. Yeah, hold on one moment. There we go.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I only have 2 minutes. So this behind the Mac ad, which I think is very smart.
There's a certain kind of person who doesn't take no for an answer. They don't walk in quietly. They parade in, trailblazing, eyebrow raising, status quo breaking. Raising greatness.
And so I love that in this one, how, I mean, they're mixing obviously great music. They're so great for that. Using the black and white footage and the faces, which is an echo back to that Think Different campaign that they had a couple of years ago that was so impactful with all the different people, just generally, they're just great people think differently. But here we've got great people creating great things or making great change. And again, a lot of diversity of people, all these famous stars who just happen by chance to be using Apple products that are so recognizable because of their excellent product design and branding.
Yeah, no, it's well done because it also mixes in regular people too. That's not all celebrities. There's well, Lisa Simpson, but it's a lot of celebrities, which is good. But there's regular people in there too, so you can see yourself in there, and it's not necessarily holiday themed, right? It's
Right.
more kind of like you would anticipate from Apple, just a well done commercial that highlights the product without being showy.
Yeah. Very, very stylish, and all the echoes for all the things that they've done in the past, the black and white and everything. There's another piece that, folks, if you aren't the kind of people who typically do check out the Apple keynotes, seriously, not everyone does. But
who are these people?
But they are famous for when Steve Jobs was the man, was that one more thing, so they'd have this whole big thing, and at the end it would be, oh, there's one more thing, in kind of a Columbo way, but not really, but just his showmanship, Steve's showmanship. Then they would reveal that, oh, and also, by the way, we have this whole new phone, or whatever it might be. And so, but for this, I think the one new thing was just actually more of a cameo by John Hodgman, who was in the I'm a Mac on a PC ads, which was very cute and clever, and kind of I think certainly those are iconic ad campaigns as well. I mean, they ended up reproducing them around the world with different actors. So
that's one of my favorite series of commercials.
Yeah, for sure, always fun. But so for these holiday commercials, like what do you think makes, is it always the, This Wonderful Life, kind of like, we face peril and we turn it around? Like what else can win? Humor obviously can come through as well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the fourth quarter is a time in which we are, as consumers, being hit with all sorts of ads all the time. So, the things that stand out to us during this time of year, I think, tend to be things that make us feel nostalgic about the holiday, the memories that we make around the holidays, what we enjoy, family coming together or whatever it might be, that aligns a little bit with the brand as well. So yeah, I think you see a lot of nostalgia in ads in the fourth quarter, and that can work.
And when I think about this, like I think these big ads, I mean, we're obviously looking at the high end of the spectrum. These are brand building ads. They're not trying to sell a particular product. But why I think that's maybe interesting and useful for small business is this is also a time when small businesses are reaching out to their existing clients, and nonprofits also maybe reaching out to their donors and funders and people, and just kind of trying to rebuild that connection in kind of the way that a brand ad would do. And at the same time, though, what I've experienced sometimes is a small business owner will be like, okay, let's put together our package, and by the way, I want to promote this thing at the same time. And I can understand the impulse because it's expensive to be sending out, for example, individual gifts or something. And yet I feel like, you're diluting, or you're, what's the right word there? I think you know what I'm getting at, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the right word too. I mean, you're just sort of capitalizing a little bit too much on the moment. So what you're talking about, I think, when you say package, like a holiday gift, something to let your customers know that you've appreciated working with them throughout the year. It doesn't have to even be a gift. Some people just send like a really heartfelt card or email or whatever it might be. But you were reaching out not to sell at that moment, and more to build goodwill and recognize the partnership or the relationship in some way that you've had with someone throughout the year. And that's really what it should be focused on and should stay there. Because if you do a good job at that, then they will think of you for the thing that they need to buy or whatever it is, right?
What do you think about like including something in there? There's like the thank you very much, and then maybe there's like a little, and hey, by the way, here's like a 10% discount on your next oil change or something. You know what I mean? For assuming we're talking about a auto.
I feel like you were in a client meeting with me this week, and you may have been listening to this exact question that I was asked.
No, it's just the thing that comes up a lot,
Okay, well, this exact same thing came up. Like, should we, we're sending a holiday gift, should we also insert, something about our services or something, some sort of promotional card or piece in there? And I honestly, I lean towards no. Mm-hmm. I lean towards no.
I think if you're going to do it, I mean, I have received those, like, here's 10% off your next, inspection. And I have been like, oh, thank you. Because that's all that they were really sending. They weren't like, it was just kind of like I'm glad you're our client. We want you to stay our client. Here's a little token. And I thought, I could go for that. But I also think it's fine to just say, we are really glad for you. It really depends on the relationship and maybe the periodicity of it. So for example, the auto shop, like I could easily be stolen away.
Yeah.
And so that it needs a little bit extra, but somewhere where I've got maybe like a subscription to it, it's harder for me to unsubscribe than to not. And so maybe it's not necessary there,
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, when I say I lean towards no, I definitely mean when somebody is putting together a gift, some, a boxed thing, cheeses and wine or whatever, like a nice big gift like that. And then to see like a promotional thing in that kind of really nicely crafted gift doesn't feel like it belongs there. But your oil change example is great because a small auto shop who is trying to just, send out a holiday card and thank customers, that's a way to thank them. Like, hey, thanks for being a customer this year. Here's 10% off your next service or whatever. It could go a really long way to get people back in.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to always think about on that. And it's good to kind of bat those ideas around with your team more, your trusted marketing consultant.
Right.
What's going to be a good solution? What's going to be a nice way to reach out? And they are often, kind of a large marketing expense to send out, a whole bunch of gifts. Even if you're saying only certain people get this and other people get that, it's still a lot of work and a lot of money.
It's a lot of work, and it is, as you say, can be very expensive. And so I think that's why there's a desire to perhaps put something promotional salesy in there, because you're like, oh, we're investing a lot in this holiday. Holiday gift, are we going to get something back out of it? But then again, it's like, well, why are you doing this gift?
The gift itself is the thing. The gift itself is the message. Just, we appreciate you, not and we also want something from you. It's just, we appreciate you.
Yes, exactly. All right.
So fun.
So that's fourth quarter news. And I think we're, always highlighting interesting ads that we stumble upon or stumble across here in office hours. So if you have any ads that you would like us to review or look at, please send those our way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that there's going to be so many more coming out through this period. as well as the more direct, maybe next week we can talk about the more direct, what are the great, product ads that are coming out right now. And what are the things that almost don't even need an ad, like the Baby Yoda dolls, which are already selling out, by the way, and which I want.
I'm not surprised. Not surprised by
something
that.
Doesn't even need an ad.
Yeah, right.
But also in news this week, beyond sort of advertising, we got some more, we had talked a few weeks ago about the Google Core Web Vitals. I don't know, how many weeks ago was that, Sarah?
To be honest with you, I don't know for sure, because I feel like we've talked about them at a couple of different points over the last few months, because it's been a big deal.
Yeah, well, it certainly is. So, but to summarize for anyone who maybe didn't catch that episode, Google's Core Web Vitals are, Google has had this initiative, the Core Web Vitals, where they're like, what does that mean, by the way, that phrase, Core Web Vitals? Like, what are the things that are essential to a good web experience? And they've got more data than anybody else on this kind of thing, like trying to figure out how do you tell that something was a good web experience, and what are the things that led up to it? And in the course of doing that, they determined that what are the signals what are the things that turn into a good page experience, and then what are the search signals? They're using the search signals to measure it. So the topics are loading, interactivity, visual stability, mobile-friendly, safe browsing, HTTPS, and no interstitials. We've talked about those things before. But this stuff up here, they have decided that stuff is the most important stuff. Basically, it's all about how fast, how well does your site perform, and how stable is it as it performs? Like, what's my visual experience like? Anyway, so now they're going to make that stuff matter to rank.
That's right.
And so we were panicked.
Well, no. I mean, the good thing is that this Core Web Vital information was released by Google many months ago, and I think in the summer. I believe in the summer. I don't know exactly when, because I feel like we've been talking about it for ages, but they released it in advance of saying, oh, by the way, we have these new things we're looking at, and it's going to impact your ranking. And they kept saying early 2021. So I have been saying to, internal team members, like, let's just be ready by January with our clients, and let's identify what we want to be doing with our clients' websites in advance of this change that's coming. And so the news, why we're talking about it this week, is that Google said this week that it's going to impact the ranking in May, right? Yeah, okay, it's in the title.
This May of coming up here. So that's better than what it gives everyone a bit more time. So
it gives us a bit more time, and for us, we have a lot of clients that this is going to impact, so it helps us have a little bit more breathing room. So I guess I'm feeling a bit relieved about it. Not to say that we are no longer worrying about it. It's just that we have more time to focus on rolling out our changes that we're going to need to make with our clients.
Right. And so, I mean, this is going to mean that we want to take it. They've also, by the way, provided different tools to allow us to kind of see how are we going to rank. Improved tools built right into the Chrome browser, for example, and other places, so that you get into the search engine console, so you can really see how you're performing and have something to measure yourself to. So now you've got a timeline, and you've got metrics, and now all you need is a plan. So that's really I think our message to people is to see how your site is doing against these different measurements that Google was saying, this is the important stuff. And then to just, start figuring out, like, what does that mean for us? Where should we budget our time and energy and efforts? And when are we going to do that so that we're ready in time for May?
Yeah, I think one of the things that this article talks about is that Google's working on, I guess, some visual indicators to identify pages that have met the criteria. And so I read that as in the search results, right? Like you'll be able to see.
Oh, really? Is that right? Okay.
I think that's how I
Oh,
read
you're
it. I
right.
could be
No.
wrong. New labels and search results.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. That you would be able to see that. So it's kind of like makes the people that have done it look really great and makes the people that haven't done it look not so great. So that is interesting to me. The article's also
not sure yet. So I think it sounds like they're going to test it. So that's something to keep an eye out for, I think. Whether you start to notice as you're looking for other things on the web or as you're checking on your own stuff, how well we're going to do. So
yeah. And the article also mentions that right now, if this rolled out today, I guess, only about less than 15% of sites will have, sort of passed the core Web Vital metrics and where they want you to be. So
does that mean, as you think about that, does that say to you, you won't have passed them as opposed to even doing well on them? Like, are we going to see everybody like fall off the web if the whole web goes away? I mean, it does still rank,
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in May. That's why I think a lot of us are like, okay, we're paying attention to this and we're making a plan and we're going to try to see what we can do. I mean, it's a little overwhelming too, because there's if you run some of the tests that are out there that you can run to see how your site measures up, it's you could have a really bad score right now, and some of the things could be really that they're asking you to do can seem pretty major. So that's why the sooner you look at these things, the better. And you can prioritize those things, based on the results of those assessments and determine what you should focus on first.
Yeah, I think if you get yourself into a space where that you're in the out of the poor range into at least the needs improvement range, that's a good thing. And of course, always aiming to get up into the good range. But as far as like not, I don't think everyone should completely panic, but just know that the tools are out there, and it's and you've got a good 6 months now to make something happen.
Yes, exactly. So that feels better.
Yeah, I like having a plan. It helps a lot.
Yes. So that concludes the In the News segment of Office Hours. Maybe this is a good time to say, if you are just joining us, the way that this works is we are going to talk about some things. We have things lined up to talk about. However, we would love to hear your questions. If you have questions about anything we've talked about thus far, or about what we're going to talk about next, which is, what is the shelf life of a website these days? So if you have questions about website design and the like, we can answer those things, and you can submit those via the chat here in YouTube, or you can email us questions at officehours@shiftcollaborative.com. We hope to hear from you.
So shelf life of a website. I mean, what we're really asking is, we're asking the question that many of our clients ask us, which is how long should I expect my website to last, in the sense of not just sort of existing on the web, but how often do I need to something it? And the verb there maybe is kind of part of the mystery of the question. But so so when you think about like how long a website is a good website, like what do you think about?
In terms of what kind of makes up that shelf life, or so I think, first and foremost, the code that the site is built upon is something that you need to factor in. Websites, when you build them at the beginning, they are built upon all this different languages and different things in the background that your web developer probably dealt with that you didn't have to. But so they're built on HTML and CSS and different coding languages, and that makes up kind of a framework that the visuals and the interface and the content all sort of sit on top of, and when you build your site, that is something that, at the time is built to be solid and good, and hence the word like framework. it's a good foundation. However, things change. Nothing in sort of coding and design really ever stays the same. So you have to anticipate that as those things that your site was built upon a couple of years ago, advances are made in CSS or changes to HTML and all of these things that you kind of have to then assess and factor in.
Yeah. And why that happens, why there is all that change, is it can come from a couple of different places. One might be that maybe there turned out to be a security flaw somewhere in the code and it needs to be addressed. Mm-hmm. Another might be that a new language has come along that allows different things and other web developers want to use it, or people have to accommodate it in some way. There could also be that the equipment that the servers that it used to live on, they have needed to be upgraded. And so now we're moving to a new version. But typically it kind of fits in with this larger thing of computer programs. We release new versions because we are either fixing the things that were broken or we're adding things that people have asked for. Mm-hmm. And so between those two things, that I think is hard for people to understand. It's kind of like, why do I need another version of Microsoft Word? Like I'm typing in this one seems fine. But mm-hmm. for a variety of reasons about like the operating system of your computer maybe has changed and that old code literally does not run on it anymore. You now need new code.
Yeah.
Or there were problems with that. There were maybe holes that people were exploiting with malware. There's a lot of reasons why. And all of that applies to websites too. So it's not like, technologists are just trying to like take your money. It's more that all these different pressures mean that it needs to move forward in some way.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing too, when websites were launched, however many years ago, there was really not all the different devices that we have, and the sizes and the surfaces that we interact with a single website have really vastly changed, and that has meant a lot of new things that websites have to consider when or companies have to consider when designing and developing their website.
Right. So when we're using a mouse, and remember, mice weren't always around for computers too, but for the web they always were. When we're using a mouse or a touchpad, we can hover over things, hover our cursor over something, and something will drop down on the screen. But when you're on your phone, you can't hover with your finger. Like the phone can't tell that you're a half a centimeter above it. So hovering doesn't really work. You have to tap. Well, what does tapping mean? Like, how do you map the tap, if you will, to the mouse hover versus click? And so we need to then create new kinds of code and new mental metaphors and things for how we're going to change things to accommodate these new input devices and new display devices.
Yeah.
And then the screen size as well is kind of even more obvious. You're either on a desktop like this or you're on a phone like this. And with the phone, we clearly can't just shrink everything down. We're going to need to rejigger everything so it fits. But then they had to create new kinds of standards and codes and framework to allow that to not be excruciatingly painful every time we create a site. Mm-hmm. Sites that were created in the old frameworks, it just doesn't, there's no easy, there are not that many easy patches that make it really still a good experience.
Yeah, I mean, you maybe have heard this, sometimes business owners will say, well, my website currently works. It's a functioning website. Yes, it was built 15 years ago or 10 years ago, whatever it is, but it works. So why should I bring it up to standard or code, if you will?
Right. Well, when you say works, there's different kinds of works. Mm-hmm. So this code stuff that we've been talking about is part of it. It may be that when the site was set up, there weren't the things for people to have a screen reader. So for example, if someone is visually impaired or is old and can't see tiny letters, like me, the site was not built to adjust to different types of accessibility and usability. And so when you say works, it only works for certain people on certain devices. And that's no longer what we consider working. Right. So, and if you say, well, I don't care, I only want to do this, then you're excluding a large portion of a potential maybe audience or market for yourself. And also, according to what Google was just saying in the core Web Vitals, you may no longer be showing up in the search engine as high as you used to, just because Google can see that. Google can see that you have not adapted to the newer, your site has not adapted to the newer technologies and is not as accessible as it needs to be. And it's now they're going to give you demerits for that. And now all of a sudden, where you were on page 1, now you're on page 10.
Right, because Google doesn't want to send people to your site if they're not going to have a good experience. And even before the core Web Vitals, Google was dropping sites down in ranking that were not responsive on the different devices. So that's already a thing. That's already happened before. So yeah.
So those are technological reasons. There's also like the media itself, like. For a while, there was some weirdness around video, like how are you going to watch video? And so the code and the standards and all got better so that it became easier for someone to put a video on their website and it to be used on all these devices that, by the way, all handle video files differently, encodings and things. That's all the magic behind the scenes, which I kind of view as similar to like what's happening underneath the car hood. I have no idea. I have a vague sense of like combustion engines or diesel versus gas or those things versus electrical, but it's very vague. So that is also kind of how I view video on the web and on a phone. Like it's like, well, the video just plays, right? Well, it's not like a VHS tape. There's a lot that's going on to allow that a file to be able to work on these different devices that all have different kinds of chips and buses and things inside them where the data is moving around. And
there's a lot happening. Yeah.
We're glad that other people are solving that for us.
Yes. All right. So, so when we're talking about shelf life, we're talking about the code. That's one thing we're talking about,
it's the biggest and the most obvious one.
It is the first thing that we're going to be assessing. And then we also look at design. What are we looking at when we're looking at design?
Well, it can be a lot of things. It's pretty quick to see, and I maybe while you're talking, I can pull up a screen, but when you look at a site that was developed in, say, well, certainly a site that was developed in 1996 when the web first came around versus a website that was developed now, it's going to be very obvious to you which one's which, right? The one in 1996, I think there were like 3 fonts that we could use, maybe even 1. There was no like placing things. Pictures were very, small, and they were kind of dropped in the middle of a sentence. There just was not a lot of visual
interest.
And I'll be honest, I actually got a chance to see the web in 1990. I guess it was 1995, early 95. At work at Next, I saw a very, very early web browser, and I was in the art and production department at the time, and so I saw this and I was like, then I was trying to imagine how would we do any of our like help pages or any kind of design on this, and I was like, that's never gonna work. Nobody's gonna be able to use that thing. Oh my god, it's so ugly.
Yeah. So I think it would be very obvious if you put up the 1996 website next to the 2020 website, which one was designed when, and you could start kind of comparing the different design features. I think about cell phones, mobile phones designs too. When I think about just design is a thing that changes and that's ever evolving. And then our, opinion of design is subjective and different, right? But if you think about the early iPhone, I can remember getting that first iPhone, and it was thicker, and it was heavier, and the touch screen was different then. So if you pull up, just like if you could pull up the 1996 website next to the Today website, you do the same thing with your 2004 iPhone to your 2020 iPhone, and obviously it's like we're on 12 now. We were on, I don't know, what was the first one? 1.
You didn't have a number.
Didn't have a number, right? But, so much, and just even within, owning your single, X or whatever, all of the software updates, all of the things that change, and that can happen just in the owning one phone. So it's not that dissimilar from website design and being able to stay current without being sort of led around by trends. I think that that's kind of an important thing. You have to consider your brand styles, and what we're commonly working with clients on is, they come to us with a brand and now they want to do a website, and we have to kind of translate their brand for the web experience. And so that is important to think about when you're designing a website. But then when you're looking at, okay, well, is my site as fresh from a design perspective as it could be? You're looking at different things.
Does it look like, when people look at my competitors' websites and at my website, do I look, is my website positioning me where I think I should be? Like you some competitor, maybe it's you're saying, yes, they are the flashy one and we are the stable one. Well, but does your site, actually use the visual conventions that make it seem like the appropriate, formal, trustworthy thing that it is? Or does it for some reason not look like that? Has it gone, is it using technologies that we're no longer using, or parts of it like just seeming wrong? Have you changed which fonts you tend to use in the printed materials that you use so that they no longer match what you were using on the website? So those little changes that you might do along the way, and kind of the evolution of your brand, your website needs to catch up with that too. It may not mean an entire overhaul of the whole website, but at least some almost maintenance of the visual characteristics of it.
Right. I mean, I think to what you're saying, if your brand philosophy is that, you're the contemporary, the modern, the, sort of cutting edge in your field for your product, your service, and then someone goes to your website and that's not the impression that the website is giving, then you're going to just have a hard time converting that person to somebody that buys from you.
It just creates that tiny little bit of a barrier that might be the one thing that slows them down and flips the switch, even if it's subtle, even if it's just it's only part of the larger equation. But it's all part of the things that could help to lead to that conversion of getting a sale.
That's right.
So there's the technology underlying the site, there's the visual aspects of the site, and then there's the content of the site, like the things that are actually being said or shown on the website. Like, are those fresh? Are they current?
Yeah, are they following best practices to be, optimized in search? Is the content the kind of content that your audience wants and is interested in? So I think when you first launch a website, you have high hopes that what you put on it is the right content, and you're not just hopefully putting up content willy-nilly. You're kind of thinking it through and saying, okay, this is how we want to, this is how we talk about our brand in printed materials. This is what it's going to look like on the web. Here are the types of content we're going to put in our article section or our blog. And you really put a lot of thought into it. But then people start visiting your website and you are gathering data and you're seeing what are the things that people are interested in, where are they not visiting at all, where are they going to a lot, what are the common questions that perhaps your website content isn't currently answering, but it could. So you gather all this great data, and so you should use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the sort of the architecture of the site too can be affected in those ways. So let's imagine that you have started a website and you're kind of decide, okay, we're going to have a blog area on it so that we can show our thought leadership. And at the beginning, because there's not a lot of posts there because you've just started, you think, well, I don't want to make that be too prominent on the site because I don't need people to see it. But then let's imagine that over time you actually do follow through on that plan. This is Max. He would like to come and talk with us about website freshness too. You follow through on that plan and you built up your blog. But your blog you originally had just kind of hidden in a corner of the site. And so you're putting all this great work, and yet it's not getting integrated into the experience of someone who's coming to your site maybe for the first time. Maybe it's showing up in search results, which is awesome. But for people who come from other aspects, they're not getting the full benefit of the effort that you put in there. So sometimes your site needs to be rethought given changes since you put it together.
Right. Don't put baby in a corner, as one of my favorite movies would say. Yeah. So I think that, information architecture, that feels like a thing that you might only have to do once. Like, oh, well, I just put this really great architecture together when I build the site the first time, so I don't need to worry about that anymore. And that's just not the case.
Right. It doesn't, and we're not saying I think that you need to change it every month or, really even every quarter. I think though that it is worthwhile revisiting it. And if your site was built in such a way that there's some flexibility to it, it's not that you'll need to redesign the whole thing, but you might want to reposition or just take some key, it's kind of like doing an addition on your home as opposed to tearing your home down and building a new one or moving to an entirely new space.
Right.
It's more like, how can we, we've got this back door, can we put an addition on the back and have that just be a passageway?
Yeah, I think the house is a good example. Metaphor?
Metaphor or analogy, depending on which verbs we use.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to use. The thing is too, if you own a home or even if you own an apartment or rent an apartment, you sometimes want to freshen it up, want to do something new, want to change it up a little bit, and it delights you and the people that come there.
Right. Keep the things that delight you and the people that come there, and get rid of the things that don't.
That's right. Right. So, so there's, I guess, this is a question. If you have invested in a website and then you continue to invest in making some of these updates that we're talking about, maybe it's not like wholesale redesign every time you do something. It's more like, okay, we're going to tweak this. We're going to be paying attention to the information architecture and where people are, getting stuck, and making sure that it's easy to flow through the site and that content is findable and all the good things. If you're doing that and you're paying attention on a regular basis to those things, then perhaps if you are investing in that regularly, does that mean you don't need to overhaul your site, insert X number of years?
Well, I think that's a great debate, a great discussion. Yes, I would say that there is after a certain point, a point where you're going to have to deal with change in technology. And it doesn't matter how much you do the maintenance for different pieces. This is kind of like a car more than a house. Your house isn't going to, if you're doing the maintenance on your house, it's going to last you a super long time. And I think that's what people typically think when they make a major expense like building a brand new website. It's a big deal to them. They've put in a lot of money and they expect that to last a long time.
Sure.
So you want to make sure that you're being built on frameworks and technologies and good code, so that in a smart way, so that small changes can happen, medium changes can happen without having to redo the whole thing from scratch. But like a car, like you can, and I can remember the old Click and Clack radio show, like they would try to keep those cars working as long as possible, like even like pull out the engine, or I don't even know all the words, like I said earlier, but
yeah.
And so just changing, keeping gas in and changing the oil and getting new tires is good, and washing the car apparently is very important. So I'm told. But after a while, literally things are no longer going to work. In the case of a car, it's because there's physical wear and tear. In the case of a website, it's because the servers and the code on which the site has to run, because the internet is distributed, but it is a thing. Those have changed, and the things that your old code was using are no longer there. So it's more like we can no longer run VHS tapes because the tape itself stretches and is no longer, just can't do it.
Right. So I'm sorry, I'm distracted by Max's cute little paw, and it's just distracting and cute. But so I guess when we're talking about budget for a website and the things to consider, what we're perhaps advocating for is, making beyond that initial investment that you make to design and develop the website in the first place, that you also set aside money to keep up with it regularly, the content freshness, looking at the analytics, making sure that you're able to respond to things like the core web vitals. All of those things should be budgeted for on a monthly basis. And then as far as sort of responding to these larger changes in frameworks and browser things and all of the other stuff that you're talking about from a more technical aspect, we would suggest what in terms of budget?
Well, it depends on the site, but so you have to budget, I think if you
Time frame, I'm saying time frame.
If you've got a good framework, I would say it could go, I might be on the longer side on this. I might say 5 years. But it's going to need some significant, it's again, like a car, like you may have to replace the transmission at some point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so 5 years, if you've also been keeping up with the
Yes.
maintenance and all of the paint,
and if it was built in a way that it can adapt in many ways, that it can
Yes.
handle adding new things in.
yes. If you're not keeping up with it on a regular basis, the shelf life is perhaps
It's going to be much shorter. I don't think, I mean, you can get away with 2 years, but if you're not really updating the site, then we come back to the question of, is your site still working? Is it
useful for the user, for the visitor?
Can people even read it on their devices? Is there anything there that they're going to use? And is it showing up in the search or not? If it doesn't ever change and people come to it and then they immediately bounce and go away, then I think you could argue that your site, while it is visible on the web, is no longer working in a larger sense of working.
Right. So we are, I guess, going on record saying that a shelf life of a site that isn't updated frequently, maybe 2 to 3 years, and a site that does get the love and care and attention and feeding that it needs, more like 5.
5 and maybe a little bit more, but it's going to need some, it's going to need some help along the way.
Some fine tuning.
Yeah.
All right. So what
does our audience think? So if people want to send in some notes in the comments, or send us a note afterwards, like, do you massively disagree? Or are we overestimating frameworks? Like, what am I thinking, saying that it's going to last as long as 5 or 7 years? Like, what am I would be really curious to know what other folks think about that.
Me too. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Next.
Yeah. Max definitely wants to hear from you. So please write in to Max, if nothing else.
So I mean, this is the thing that we think about an awful lot, and being able to not just justify the expense for hiring us, but to explain what's going on and really help people understand the web and why it is the way it is. Like, this stuff is all still super new in the longer term.
That's right. All right, so we've adequately covered shelf life of a website. We were going to end today with a little kind of tutorial overview of a related topic, which is optimizing a piece of content on your website for search engine optimization. I think I just said optimize twice, but you know what I mean.
An optimal number of times. That's right.
Right. So let me see how I think I wanted to share my screen at some point here. But one of the things we just want to kind of quickly talk about in the remaining minutes of, if you have a piece of content, there are a couple of things that you should be doing with it to make sure that, you're positioning it well to be found in the search engines. But I think, like, before you get to this spot of us talking about what we're going to talk about next, you should have thought through your larger content strategy, because one post is just part of a large collection of other articles and pages on your website. So how does it fit in, and where does it fit in, and it should be strategically aligned with your content plan. But let's say you've done that step, and now you are ready to write an article. What should you do first?
Well, first are going to kind of think through, like, what are the, if I'm writing an article, it's about a topic. Apparently it's a topic that I think people care about. But what are the words people think about when they think about it? There might be more than one set of words. There might be the words that the professionals use, and there might be the words that the, I want to say common folk or lay people, but the, you know, the rest of the world uses with regard to that, with regard to that term. Like maybe there's more than one way to say it.
Yeah, it's really what you're talking about is search intent. So, you know, what is the intention of the user when they go to the search engine to find the topic that you have lots of great information about in your article. And so one of the tools that we use is called SpyFu. And there's a number of tools that you can use to do keyword research. But step one of this process of determining what you're going to write about or how you're going to craft this article is first determining what is that focus keyword or keyword phrase, back to that sort of intent. What are people actually typing into the search engine? And tools like this can help you play around with different phrasing, and it'll tell you the popularity of that phrase and if it would be a good one for you to use. Now, we can talk about a lot of different things when we talk about keywords and keyword phrases, or key phrases as Yoast calls it, which is a longer set of keywords that work together. There's a lot to go into it, but just right off the bat, let's just say you were going to write an article about paid search. And so you type paid search into SpyFu, and it is going to tell you some similar keywords, what the monthly volume is. And so in this case, it's about 1,600 searches are happening a month on this topic. An estimated number of clicks that you might get on this topic. And then it just gives you a lot of information. So you can use this information to then craft your article. Because once you determine that this is your keyword phrase, then you're going to have to write with it. And you're going to have to use it in a number of places, which I'm going to quickly talk about in the last remaining few minutes. So you've done your keyword research and you've determined that you're going to write about paid search. And we just so happen just wrote an article about paid search. So I'm going to use it as our example. So this is our blog post that our wonderful Kelly Curry wrote, and we just posted it today, and it's about paid search. And so this is the article, and I'm going to show you the back end of the article to explain where this keyword phrase needs to be. So can you see it right off the bat? Where do you see paid search right off the bat?
I see it as the first two words of the title of the post.
It's in the headline. So it's really important that your keyword or keyword phrase is in a heading, an H2, an H3. Mm-hmm. So this is the back end of that blog post. We use WordPress to design our site, and we use a plugin called Yoast. And it's a free plugin. They do have a premium version, but the free plugin gets you pretty far. And so you can put your focus keyword, once you've written your article utilizing that focus keyword or key phrase, you can then get a score, and it gives you good, okay, needs improvement, and there's colors that go along with. So this blog post got a green. If I typed another word in here, added another phrase, that might change our score. So this is kind of a good tool to help you see, how you could improve the content a little bit once you've already written it. But they have this analysis section, and we've got one problem, which we could decide to update on a revision, which is that the keyword phrase is not used in a subheading. So that is a thing we could do if we would like to improve our score even further. We have it, we have outbound links and internal links. That's just a general good practice. First and foremost, we have the keyword phrase and the introduction. So within the first paragraph, and I think in our case, we put it it's at the end of the first paragraph, as you can see there. Mm-hmm. I'm going to sort of fast forward to keyword density. So again, this is like a larger topic, but essentially there's a balance. You want to use the keyword phrase in various different parts of your content, but you don't want to overuse the phrase. That is called keyword stuffing, and you could get dinged in the search engines for it. And also, it's just not a great user experience if the keyword phrase is, every other sentence. That's not great for the visitor who's reading your article. So you have to, consider that. So Yoast is giving you a green score if your keyword density is anywhere between 0.5 and 0.3%. So what's nice about Yoast is it just does the math for you. You don't have to worry about the math part. So that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought I would say, there's a lot of different criteria here, but maybe it's useful also to explain where these criteria come from. Why does it need to be an outbound link? Why does it need to be in the meta description?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think, for the purpose of, let's just say Google as a search engine, they need to determine whether your article matches that user's search query, because they want to be showing, people that are searching in their search engine, they want to show them the most relevant and match the most relevant content to their search query. And so Google has determined that if they see the search query that the person has typed in a multitude of places in your article, that could be a match. And so, you want to kind of follow these best practices so that you're showing up when Google is looking at it and doing their very fast algorithmic scan of your content. Does that answer your question?
It does. And I think the part people should realize too is that it's not like Google said, here are the rules. Google hints about what the rules are. And then companies like Yoast and others spend time running experiments to see if they can actually find out what the real details of the rules are. Mm-hmm. So there's what Google has told us is general good policies. And then other companies have done the research and said, well, actually 7 times is a really great count for the number of times to have your phrase in for this many words. Yeah. So there's a little bit here of, take it with a little grain of salt, but these are the practices that are believed to be best and have proven to be best over time, over thousands and hundreds of thousands of websites and web results.
And also currently, this is what because the algorithm changes pretty frequently, whether across any of the search engines, because ultimately they're trying to have the best user experience for when people are searching around for information.
Awesome.
So yeah, what's great, I just, giving a plug to Yoast, is that any of the items that you see in your score, there's articles behind them. So if you want to learn more about keyword density, or if you want to understand how you can improve it, you can click on the link and it'll take you to a fuller article where you can become even more informed and educated about keyword density, for example. So that was a very quick primer. It was just the basics of, making sure that you're really thinking through the keyword strategy of that single piece of content.
Awesome. I hope that was really helpful for folks. I think that, it changes so often and people hear different rumors and things about how, what's important and what's not. And it does seem to change so often. So it's important to keep abreast of, but it's nice that we have tools that can help us with that.
That's right. That's right. So I think we're at time.
Okay.
Want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today, and we will be back next week.
Yes, have a great rest of your Friday the 13th, folks. Hope that it is lucky for you, and I hope you have a wonderful and very